Hey guys, welcome to the ComicBase live stream. This is another of those kinds of shows. Was digging around behind my computer up until about minute and a half before broadcast here, trying to figure out what a recent lightning strike did to knock out one of the computers I typically use for demoing things. So good times, to be had for all. Welcome. I hope everyone can hear me okay. And and we're just going to navigate this the best we possibly can given the circumstances. All right, so let me see if I can, in the meantime, as I'm futzing here, get ComicBase running on just the presentation computer, which is absolutely not the way you want to do this sort of live stream thing. That's why I have a demo computer. But anyway, just in case I need to, I want to be able to show you a few things. So we'll get that rolling as I go and say hi to everyone here, stalling slightly for time. So I'm just going to cop to that one right off the bat. Anyway, guys, oh boy, this is the best produced show on the internet. No fault whatsoever to our wrench, Mr. Gregory Hecht, who is in the house here. But anyway, Jet City Comics first up here. Hope everyone's enjoying the day. Greg Hecht says, looks like we're back to the dog days of summer, heat, humidity, the threat of thunderstorms. So yes, we have those going on right outside, which is why my power is wonky. By the way, if you guys, this little PSA right now, if you guys have not heard me talk about the many virtues of uninterruptible power supplies, this is going to be another of those little mini commercials. But you not only need to have them, but you need to periodically replace their damn batteries. So what a UPS is, what people call them for short, is basically it's like a power strip with a giant battery inside of it, typically a lithium ion one. Or it could be NiCad, I guess. Nickel hydride, I guess it doesn't really matter. But anyway, big old battery in the whole thing. And what it does is it's being charged from your mains power, like the Brits would call it, all the way to it's being used, and you plug your computers and all the other sensitive things into that. And that way, if something ever happens to your mains power, like I don't know, a nearby lightning strike knocks all the power out. What it will do is it will instantly flick in and provide battery-backed power to everything that was hooked into it. Now, limits, of course, having to do with, how many things you can plug in at once and things like that. And if you ever saw my office, you would see the horror show, which is behind what I'm doing right now, with just dozens of devices plugged in, a complete rat nest, of course, everything else like that. And anyway, but what had happened a little while ago is we'd had a power strike in the area, and I noticed that one of my UPSs that I use for things like, I don't know, the computer I'm broadcasting on right at this moment, had not actually kicked in. It instead had just gone kick-dunk and immediately failed. And what that means is that the battery had gone down. So in this case, no fault of the battery in question, but you need to get yourself another of these ginormous guys right there. You can order them off Amazon for like $30 or so, give or take. They're actually ridiculously cheap for what they're doing. And if you replace the battery in your own, power strip, your, UPS yourself, you can save a fortune, because the UPSs are one of those devices where, yes, you're paying half for what's actually in there, and the rest of it is you're paying for the fact that it's a bloody heavy device, and so you're paying the ridiculous shipping charges to get the whole thing. So if you can get yourself a new battery on the whole thing, swap that out, you can keep the whole thing running and nothing goes to hell. That's at least the plan. So I was doing that. I actually had the battery ready to go, waiting for the next time that something failed in the house for it to happen. And that, of course, happened 45 minutes ago. So I unscrewed the whole thing, swapped the battery out, and got to the whole business of plugging the millions of things back into them again and firing them all up. And that's when I discovered that my demo computer was also just saying it was a good day to die today. So that was unfortunate, but we will make do. Anyway, so that's why I look a mess, and why this is not going to be one of the more aesthetic appearances I'll have in the ComicBase live stream. But like I say, we're going to make do as much as we can. All right, and I think it's just about got ComicBase running on another machine here, just about, and we'll see if we can make this happen. All right, so okay, cool. Let me pull up my show notes now. There's another things that was dumped down. I actually, did at least save a backup of them, so thank goodness for that one. And we'll get on with things. Okay. I'm sorry. By the way, I mean to say hello. By the way, to Rob Weinberg out here, Chris Persall, Dr. Beat from joining us here from Capitola, California. Department of Comics is in the house from Northeast Florida, bagging and boarding. Scruffy, not familiar where you come from, but anyways, feel free to sound off. And DA Libby out here from Roseville, California. And great. Armand says we had a 17-hour outage a couple of weeks ago. Even though we're all well underwater, etc., life went on as usual. We have a generator hooked up to our home's natural gas line. That is an incredibly sensible thing to do. If you are in I don't know, the sort of place where power might ever go out, which is to say every place I've ever lived, you will want to have the ability to make your own power after a while, because you can live on UPSs. UPSs are really, they're just there to isolate your machines from power spikes and all sorts of damaging things like that. But they're also there just to give you enough time to shut down in a normal way. They're not meant to keep the whole place running. So if your power is out for more than about 15 minutes, you're really going to want some other way of making your own juice. And honestly, the $500 you spend getting yourself a decent generator is, to be able to fire up when things get bad, along with some pretty heavy-duty, extension cords and a couple bottles of propane. I would definitely suggest, if you don't use it a lot, go with one that you can fuel using liquid propane as opposed to gasoline, because the problem with gas-powered generators is the gas sits in the tank, and after about 6 months, that gas has turned the carburetor on the whole thing into varnish, and it's not a lot of fun when the whole damn thing doesn't start right when you need it most. It's usually a horrible weather or horrible winter storm or pouring rain, things like that. So liquid propane definitely be my suggestion on way to go. Now, if money is no object whatsoever, by all means, get yourself one of those fantastic whole house generators. You always see them advertised at Costco and everything. They will set you back 4 to 5 figures, but hey, at that point you just literally you've got a thing called a transfer switch in your house that as soon as you throw that thing, then your whole house is just running on the rather loud energy source that you've got yourself, and you could presumably keep going as long as you have fuel. So again, if money is no option whatsoever, problem whatsoever for you, hey, absolutely get yourself one of those. If not, the $500 guy you see over at Costco will do you awfully proud in a pinch. All right, let's see here. Greg Heck says, never mind the computers, where we want running water and functioning fridge/freezer. Yeah, I mean, I have definitely powered my fridge/freezer for half a day off of generator power. It's going to keep its temperature as long as you're not opening the dang thing all the time. But yeah, just have the thing in there. It's not actually, if you actually have a monitor up on your thing, your generator your refrigerator for the most part isn't sucking down an enormous amount of power. It's just when it comes on, runs the compressor, gets the temperature up to thing, and then shuts itself off for a while, and then there's not much else going on. So it's not a massive draw, all things considered, but yeah, do have the ability to keep it going. Running water, yeah, I don't know. I mean, water generally continues to run in times of bad things. I lived in earthquake country for most of my life, and so we have that whole survivalist thing that pretty much every Californian gets after a while, where you have like cases of bottled water just kind of keeping around for things like that. But so it goes. All right, let's see. Department of Comics says $500. LOL. I don't know if that means LOL, like mine was made more expensive, or I would never spend that much. I don't know. But anyway, I know I picked mine up for about $500. You can get bigger, better ones. It just depends on what you're trying to power. You size the generator for what you're trying to get yourself away from. Hi from Syracuse, New York. Oh, Syracuse, New York. Right on from that Scruffy here. Department of Comics says, got to keep the AC running down here. Okay, all right. AC is a hell of a lot of power. So yes, you will definitely want a lot more power than your little $500 guy will go. We can power fans off generators, but full on AC, yeah, no, you're talking the whole house thing at that point. So I hope you're loaded. Okay, anyway, let's get back onto the show here. So, all right, so let me make this a little bigger so I can see what I'm doing here. All right, so news for everyone out in the chat. So a couple of news items, then we'll get to questions. By the way, if you have your own questions for the show, please post them to @ComicBase TV. It helps kind of highlight them in the chat, and so I can see them a little better. But feel free, if there's anything on your mind that you want answered, I'm probably, unless Steve, Dassinger's in the chat, I'm probably the best guy to answer these things. So, feel free, ask away, and I will do my best. All right, so let me just turn off one thing over here so I can see this a little bit better. Okay, and view show. I do not want to see that. Okay, great. All right. So, number one, first of all, if you guys are using ComicBase 2025, please, by all means, grab the latest version from the downloads. You would get that to go to my account on ComicBase.com, go to registrations, and then click on the latest installer. I believe we're up to build, oh, good grief. I'd have to look at the website to see it, but there have been a couple of tweaks on it in the last couple of weeks. And if you haven't done it lately, this is probably as good as ComicBase 2025 is ever going to be. In other words, we've fixed all the bugs that we know of in ComicBase 2025. For the last couple months, or several months really, we've been working on the next version of ComicBase, codenamed Metropolis. It will probably, not probably reckoning too many corporate secrets here to say, it'll probably go as ComicBase 2026, but for reasons we always have working titles for the software as we keep going. But that one will be coming out. We talked about it on the last week's live stream. You'll be hearing about that one in, probably see it in real life. We're targeting end of summer for the release. Might happen a little bit earlier, might happen a little bit, well, it's not happening later. It might happen a little bit earlier than that, but we're kind of in the end stage of getting that one ready. The main thing we're waiting on for Metropolis, the next, big deal, which will have all sorts of cool new features and stuff like that you've probably seen some of if you watched last week's live stream, or at least heard of on the last one. But if not, we'll certainly be talking a lot more about that in a few weeks. But the other thing about it that we're waiting on, that's kind of holding us up, is we're waiting on some new code for barcoding on the new iOS version of the app. So we've got a version of our app for this guy over here, the iPhone Pros, that is just night and day better on barcoding and many other things, but particularly the barcoding. We basically had to have our own custom library written on the whole thing. We spent a lot of time and investment on this one, and the programming team is finishing up the version that interfaces to the iOS portion of that one. So as soon as we got that code in from that developer, then we will get those things submitted into the app stores, and then we will get the train on startup to roll towards release on that one. Okay. Oh, and Steve Dassinger is indeed in the house. The current build of ComicBase 2025 is 4,628. So that's the last digits right after the ComicBase 26 point. The last one's, which means that in building it, we went through 4,628 compiles of the program in order to get to where we are. So I think the first one we shipped was like build 11 or 1,200 or so. So we've been very busy this release. Let me see here. Oh, Scruffy says, just curious now that Diamond distribution is basically defunct. What are my plans regards to the entries for Diamond code and related information on the other tab? Terrific question. Let me hit that one in just a second, and I'll get right into that one. All right, so let me see. Oh, by the way, there is a question on the cover art for Metropolis. We typically commission a brand new piece of art every year for the cover. That is a tradition going back to ComicBase 1.0, where we had the genius idea that, how do we package software? This is back when software came packaged in large cardboard boxes. We thought, well, since our stuff talks about comic books, what if we made it look like a graphic novel, and then we put the discs inside, put the whole thing in a comic bag, and sell it that way? And that was ComicBase 1.0. Because we did that the first time, we thought, well, that's pretty cool, and it gives us an excuse to commission new art every time we do a big version. So, done decades of this whole thing. My whole house is hung with the original art at this point of the different versions. At least when I could get the original art from the painter, Kent Bash and a couple of the others. Well, one of the guys, Lee Moyer, who did the ComicBase cover for, I believe it was ComicBase 2017, I believe. It was the dirigible, one where the action adventure hero was clinging onto the rope from a dirigible. Anyway, he'd done that one digitally, so there was no original art on that one. And Kent Bash, who did the covers for ComicBase 4 and 5, if you guys remember those ones, I just couldn't afford the art, certainly not at the time, and I didn't ask him afterwards. But when he told me the original price tag, I was like, I guess I'll just be buying the rights then, which weren't particularly cheap either. But anyways, some painters, when they charge for the art, my God, did they charge for the art? Many years we had Glenn Orbick as our artist, who does fantastic covers for us, for DC, and everything else. Most of the ComicBase art style, if you think that it has one, comes from him. And then later on, we, after Glenn unfortunately died, we went with Lee for the next cover, but then approached Laurel Blackman for the covers after that, and then we've been playing with other ways in previous things. We have two major pieces of art that we commissioned for the latest version of the software, and right now we'll probably be polling the Metropolis group, because what we've got here is there's two major pieces that we've done, and then we've used our own art department here, along with some help from Midjourney and things like that, of assembled some art that we like a lot, which we basically sliding in as our own special variant covers. So it appears every X number of times that you run the program. There's like a 1 in 52 chance some of the covers will appear. So some of them are very, very rare. There's two maiden covers, on the other hand, one from Bill Robinson, one from Synthetica. Really different takes on the general theme of robots. And what we want to do there is we're just going to say, well, which one do you guys like better? And that'll be the one that we use as our official art when we show the box art and things like that, and when we roll out the program. But in the meantime, yeah, we the first time ever, ComicBase comes with variant covers. All right, so we'll take it from there. All right, so oh yes, the content update very likely out today. Not promising 100%. But we got the books in from Lunar last night, and this is a great time to talk about Penguin Random House. What I've been doing this last week, largely while I'm waiting for barcode, things like that, is I've been working on the interface to suck in Penguin Random House's data so that we can get ahead, or really just get back on top of the solicitations from Marvel and so forth. So for those people who don't know how this all works, we buy comic books from all the places that go through distribution. So Marvel, DC, Dark Horse, Image, Dynamite, Titan, you name it. We try to basically buy one of everything, so that we buy kind of like a medium-sized comic store. I have 57,000 comics and counting stored right below me, and that's after all the ones that we blow out on Atomic Avenue. The usual life cycle of things is that hundreds of comic books show up all the time. They get indexed out in typically in California, and then a couple weeks later they show up as ginormous packages. There's one at my feet right now, which then I have to go and feed into my own inventory database and then file after I bag and board them. So I get all the really unfun parts of the comic books. Well, I do get to read them, so that there's that part. But what happens for all the rest of y'all is, we have typically gone and pre-indexed off of the solicitation data from the distributors all the comic books that we can get a hold of a couple of months ahead of them actually hitting the street. So that way, when you are putting in your comic books, for the week, typically you're going to find most of them there already. And if you wait until that Wednesday night, you'll pretty much find you should find pretty much all of them already in the database. So there shouldn't be a whole lot for you to do. Now, there's limitations for that one. Now, I say we try to buy one of everything. That was great. Well, it was very expensive, but it was great when there were not 17 versions of everything, which is something we can't do. I mean, there isn't enough money in the world, and God knows I'm not going to buy 250 copies of Red Sonja versus Vampirella #7 in order to get the 1 in 250 variant cover. It's not going to happen. So anyway, for those sorts of things, if the publisher didn't announce it ahead of time, and sometimes they do and sometimes they don't, those things we are really relying on user submissions for. And so there's a feature in the program where you can highlight anything you've got. After you've entered it yourself to your own database, you can highlight what you've just entered, right-click on, say, submit new or corrected data, and that goes to our editors, and that gets incorporated into the week's updates that we do every week. Now, between all these different flows of information here, so it starts out with the distributor solicitations. We get the physical books in ourselves, where we find out all the things that they solicited one way, but they shipped a different way. Last-minute changes of artistic teams, changing of title names, things like that. Very, very common. It really all goes down to what are the incentives or all the different players involved. I mean, when they're soliciting from this, when the distributor solicitation comes out there, they will just want to sell you comic books. So they're trying to make them sound as sexy as possible. They're going to give them whatever name they give them and so forth. They'll try to describe them accurately, but if they don't know the artistic team, or if the artistic team changes at the last minute, or frankly, if the name of the comic book, let's say they just called it Robin #7, but it was really Robin like 17th series, or Punisher number, what are they on, the 13th series now? They'll just call it Punisher #7. They won't say any of the rest of it. Then we also get all the fun of trying to figure out which variant is which and so forth, because only about half the time do the publishers actually give any kind of coherent messaging about which one they believe the A, B, C, D, and so forth covers are to be. Just as typically they'll sit there and say, well, yeah, there's this cover, and then there's this other cover, and then there's this other cover over there, and then we're trying to sort tea leaves to try to figure out, using issue sequence numbers and barcodes and things like that, which one we should be calling the A, B, C, D, E, F, all the way through, in some case, the 150th cover. Anyway, that's what we do with them as soon as we get them in on New Comic Book Day on Wednesday. And with that said, the update for this week, we think will be out tonight. If not, it will be out tomorrow night. But that's the editorial team out in California is finishing that one up. Unfortunately, because of Diamond falling into... Diamond is just... They're not out of business, not technically. They're just not shipping any actual comic books these days. So, and many people might be wondering, what exactly did Ad Populum, etc., get for their money? It's an open question, and please read the long, and I do mean long, series of articles on bleedingcool.com if you'd like to read Rich Johnston's take on the incredibly messy Diamond bankruptcy. The latest on that I've heard on that one, they did move the Diamond was going through a process where, and it's very unclear. They're actually disputing who's doing it. But someone, at Diamond was selling off the inventory that had been consigned to them by the publishers, and was asking the court to be able to keep doing so. But when they were presented with a request for, well, who's doing that? Is it the new owners of Diamond? Is it the old owners? Is it somebody else? They did not immediately return comment in the legal request for that one. So my goodness, this thing is messy. So if anyone has more information on that one, please put it in the chat, because we're all interested. But the latest we've heard on that one is that they were originally going to hold a hearing on whether or not Diamond was going to be allowed to keep selling off material that they had not actually paid for, that was in their warehouses. There was a hearing that was going to be scheduled for like the opening day of Comic-Con, and they managed to get that moved out. There was a hearing about the date that it would be on August 5th, and that's the last news article I heard on that one. So clearly the dust has not settled on this one at all. But I'm going to say, we at the moment, as 30-year customers of Diamond, are pretty much not customers of Diamond ourselves anymore. All our information is coming in from now. What was covered by Diamond is now split between Lunar Public Distribution, I believe. And I guess I could look at the box down at my feet. No, the shipping label's right over the name. So, but Lunar and Penguin Random House, or PRH for short. And so we've had to rewrite our utilities that we use in-house to suck in the Penguin Random House form, and then try to sift through what clues they give us to do our job of on the editorial side. And that's been really, I'm going to say, challenging for the last better part of a week or so, getting that going. So we're slowly getting that filled in as much as we can. So we should be caught up with our Penguin Random House stuff in the next week or two, but we're not 3 months ahead like we typically are with like anything that's carried by Lunar. So if you notice that the latest Marvel titles only appear on New Comic Book Day, and the DC ones were in there 2 months ahead of time, that's what's going on with all that with all that jive. And so we hope to get back on top of the swing of things, and so you should be seeing a lot of new books coming in this week and next week from Marvel, DC. What is it? Marvel, Random House, Kodansha, Seven Seas. A lot of the manga titles and so forth are going through Penguin Random House and so forth, but anyone else should already be in there from Lunar, so we're got that going on. And let's see here. Greg Heck says, not only is someone selling the consigned items without permission, but they aren't paying the publishers for it. Yeah, that's the truly galling portion of this entire thing. Is there was a distribution agreement which they had to, was it Magma, I believe, Magma Publishing actually put copies of their distribution agreement with Diamond up on on the web, so you can actually read through them. And I spent some time looking through it, and I cannot see a interpretation. Now, granted, I am not a lawyer, but I cannot see an interpretation of that agreement that would give them any kind of permission to sell without my consent items that are in inventory without paying me. And that is certainly what they've been doing. Absolutely nuts stuff. Gary Allegro says, "Yeah, I've been following it itself. It's crazy." And also Department of Comics says, "Manga shall not be stopped." Yeah, I gotta say, because I'm the guy writing the code to suck in Penguin Random House, and we've figured out the best way to exercise the code is to have the programmer be the guy importing the data and going through all the weird cases. Man, am I getting an education on current manga, manhwa, etc., etc., etc. It's a wacky world out there. Another thing I've noticed is Penguin Random House really pushing a lot of what I would otherwise call kids' books are becoming part of the solicitation. So because they're there, we're sucking those in too. So when you see the latest Dr. Seuss, floppy, oh, the places you'll go, it's coded like it was a book and record set, which is a very old code. It's just one of those electronic things where you push the little buttons and it makes the sound effects as you're reading. When you see that one in the next version of ComicBase in the book section, that was me testing this thing out. So yeah, we got a lot of stuff coming in there, and there'll be more, no doubt. All right, and looks like Ollie's will get the trade paperbacks. I think there is no doubt about that. Ollie's Discount Warehouse, or anybody else who's trying to sell it. Yeah, I'm sure they did so much stuff without consent for a long time. Yeah, I honestly don't know that much about the interior, workings of Diamond, certainly not in the last several years. I knew them pretty well when I would go to the warehouse to pick up our own stuff back in the day. I've been out to Timonium, Maryland, chat with Steve Jeppy. He's a pretty level guy. Famously, when I was demoing ComicBase as part of a deal to broker our publish of the Overstreet Price Guide, we were trying to license it back in the early days of ComicBase. We had a meeting, and I remember Steve Jeppy had to move aside a copy of Superman 8 and just literally plopped it into a box next to his desk of similarly amazing comic books in order to make room for me to set my laptop down. I thought that is one of the craziest moments I've ever seen. But anyway, that's about it. Gary says, "I've dealt with them for many years. They pulled some really shady stuff." At some point, feel free to share in the chat if you want. I'm curious about everyone's stories on this one. Don't know. I mean, our book showed up on time from them mostly, and mostly they weren't beat to hell. Although I gotta say, Penguin Random House, my God, I did not think it could be done, but they are knocking it out of the park in terms of their shipping, on terms of comic books. I'm looking forward to seeing how they handle the larger quantities, but we've started getting just out here in direct shipped to us out here in Tennessee. We started seeing parts of what used to be the old Marvel and other things like that used to be handled by Diamond. They're getting diverted over to us now indirectly, so I get to see them as they come in. And they are, I almost want to go and reverse engineer the shipping materials that they're doing, because they're astonishingly good at being able to create packaging that very securely and very, I think, as efficiently as it could ever be done in terms of cardboard usage and so forth, allows something like a book or a comic book to arrive without damage. And I did not think that would be how it would go down, because I'm used to going to, say, Barnes and Noble and seeing people pulling boxes and boxes of books out as they're stocking the shelves, and just seeing just all these big, heavy boxes, no extra protection, things like that, that they're using to load in the stock from. And I thought, there's no way in hell a comic book is going to survive being shipped like that. And as it turns out, that's not how they're shipping comic books. They're doing it really, really well, so what I can tell. So yeah, more to be seen on that one. Let's see. I copy say I see you've accounts with Lunar and PRH. What about Filbo? Yeah, Filbo is one of the other distributors in town. We have the same problem everyone would have with this in terms of we don't want to do more work to put up our orders and manage our stock than we need to. And so it was actually kind of convenient for everybody in the industry when there was one game in town and it was, Marvel, it was, Diamond, or it was Diamond in Capital City. That wasn't too bad. When suddenly we have to make sure that we're hitting the final order cutoffs and doing things out with 15 different distributors all over the place, you just don't want to. So what we're doing is we're saying, well, who has an exclusive with somebody that we care about? And we have to make sure that all our bases are covered in terms of, Marvel, DC, Image, Dark Horse, etc. We have to be getting those books in. There isn't an alternative to keep the database happy. Now, if it's somebody with, Bob's, boutique comic books, and he's the one guy who's exclusive with Filbo, well, I don't know if that's going to be enough for us to get us to open up a Filbo account. But if, say, Marvel were to go exclusive with Filbo, then we would have the account open the next day. But until we hear about something they got that's exclusive, or if they're just offering terms that are just amazing, we probably won't open up yet another distributor account, because I gotta say, this is a pain in the tuchus. Anyway, so that's my take on it for now. But this situation is developing, to put it mildly. There's a lot of things that I've really put off dealing with until after Comic-Con, because obviously, if you saw last week's show or 2 weeks ago show, you saw that we were dropping a lot of big news at Comic-Con, and so that was absolutely taking priority. But if you can see, the desk behind me right now is a lot clearer than it was. Move aside and so forth, actually cleared the inbox and all that. That was all the stuff that was stacking up in the background, waiting for me to be doing the ComicBase publication. And these are all the things that have gone on. Department of Comics asks, where do we get our bags and boards? Which actually, great segue, because it gives me an excuse to get the one thing that was in my inbox out of my inbox. So bagging and boarding, fact of life for everybody in the comic books industry. These ones here came from, I believe, these are BCW. We have used Bags Unlimited in the past. I think we still use them for something, but I'm not sure what. But title dividers, bags, and boards we get from BCW, and we do the usual thing where we order them in ginormous quantities. And I know that you can get free shipping on them. We order in such ginormous quantities that we actually have a distributor account with them. So the funny thing is, you actually get better terms from them if you're not ordering ginormous quantities, just coming in as a regular dude, because for very little money you can get them to ship it to you for free. And especially if you're talking about things like backing boards and things like that, these things are bloody heavy, and so they're very expensive to ship. I think for us to make a distributor order and get free shipping, I think that starts at around $1,000 worth of product. So, we order a lot, but we don't often order that much. But when we do, it lasts us a long time. So that's about that. All right. What other questions are here? Gary Ligo says, question about the software I asked before, and do you think we can get a Mac version that I could scan right into the computer on my Mac Pro on top of the newest one? That's actually one of the questions I was going to offer to get into at the, we had sort of a choose your own adventure thing with the live stream. Before that was with the ComicBase presentation at Comic-Con, and that was one of the things about, it was we offered choices of A, B, C, D, and E. E was just screw it, just go down the field for drinks. A was the one that we wound up talking about, which was the tell me 3 major things that we got wrong about the comic book industry, and then after you've shot your credibility all to hell, then tell us why it's also probably a really good idea for us to get the next version of ComicBase. So if you saw the live stream recap from 2 weeks ago, if not, please go ahead and review that one. That was fun. And you also noticed that I was giving the talk while talking into a gesture-controlled camera, which is something I'd never done before, and I had not fully grasped the import of the situation. As a result of that, I was actually saying, "All right, guys, which one do you want? You want number 1, number 2?" And I made a number 2 thing, because I was always taught with public speaking, you should never be pointing. So you never go like this to the camera because it looks very strange, and in some cultures it's considered very, very bad. And so whenever you're doing public speaking, you always kind of make little hand choppy things where you do the whole hand point like that. But anyway, because I was doing number 2, I did it kind of like this, which unfortunately to the gesture recognizer on the camera itself looked exactly like the symbol it uses for start/stop recording. And so the camera for the entire thing ended abruptly at that point. Yeah, so anyway, but number 2 was what was number 2? It was it was the one to get myself canceled by launching into hot button cultural issues. Number 3 was something else. Number 3, and then the 4th one was just take questions from the audience, like when are we going to see a Mac version? And because it's actually a pretty interesting topic. So the short, honest version is a Mac version, like written in Mac OS native stuff, probably not happening. And it's probably not happening because ComicBase, as you guys can tell from now, is a huge freaking program. I mean, it does an awful lot. It's hundreds of thousands of lines of code, and there's a whole ecosystem that goes around to it. And to take all that and port it over onto the Mac OS, rewriting it in a different language, you would have to write it in a different language because right now it's written in in the .NET ecosystem. You'd have to write it in something like Swift or Objective-C or something like that in order to get over on the Mac. It's just the economics don't make any sense, especially not because you can, just have Parallels going on your Mac right now and be running ComicBase just right out of the box. And you can do that for like $60 worth of investment, getting a cheap version of Parallels, which, by the way, if anyone's interested, I just got sent a 35% off code for Parallels. So if you guys are interested in that one, shoot me a note in the chat, or send a note to pbickford@human-computing.com, and I will forward that on to you. So if you haven't bought a copy of Parallels lately, by all means, let's save you some money. What the heck? I think there's some dashboard where if I had ever bothered to sign up for it properly, I would look really good on at Parallels Central if I got a whole bunch of people over there. I do not give a rip, but if I can save you guys money, booyah, right? But anyway, because you guys can run it in Parallels anyway and the speed's still pretty good, it doesn't make sense to write a native version, all right? But if you guys, and I'm gonna be a little dodgy on this one, is in dodgy like I'm dodging the question ever so slightly while I'm still kind of pointing you right at the answer. If you look at the implications of having much more fully embraced the mobile strategy, which is something that we're definitely doing with Metropolis, and you apply that out and you actually look at how other people who've tried to put collecting apps out for the Mac are actually doing it, because they're not running native code either. It probably tells you where, if you see a version that boots up straight on your Mac, how something like that could come together relatively quickly. By relatively quickly, meaning not the turning a aircraft carrier around in a lagoon level of speed that we've been trying to do it up until this point. I mean, is in like it could happen fairly quickly if that was something that we decide makes kind of sense for us. But there's a lot of other implications about how we run the business that I think I really need to take some time and get my head around before I jump into that one. But like I say, have a look at the presentation from 2 weeks ago, and I think you'll get what I'm getting at. All right, so let me see here. Oh yeah, I love the program. It's just a pain in the butt to use on Boot Camp. Yeah, you don't need to use Boot Camp. If you these days, especially if you have a modern Mac, and I know this stuff is way too tied down, so I'm not gonna gesture over at the Mac that I've got literally right out of camera. Right there, yeah, like it's 6 inches away from where I'm pointing with my finger. But that one right there with all the modern Macs, you can't use Boot Camp anymore because they changed to what they call Apple Silicon, right? Basically, they came up with their own chipset, which doesn't allow them to emulate in the same way. So the only company that I know that's successfully working with them is they actually worked out a emulation method I believe it's called Rosetta, that allows Parallels, and only Parallels, pretty much as far as I know, to run the stuff at basically damn near native speeds. And you do it just by you say, oh yeah, I want parallels, and you literally double click the icon and it's there, kind of thing. It's separate booting and things like that. But that parallels desktop is actually kind of it's a bit of dark magic as far as how it works. But that is definitely something that feel free to look into if you're interested. Let's see here. Scruff, you're talking about acrylic backing boards, China and so forth. And then lots of talk about tariffs and things like that. Yeah. Okay. And by the way, and Valentina, hey, googly EIT, right back at you. All right. So, all right. And mod, that's the kind of thing that, like, that's why you're all here. All right, we'll see if Valentina keeps going. Oh my goodness. All right. So, other things going on in life. So, we talked about the Penguin Random House. Oh, the other thing I want to say about Penguin Random House stuff, and wow, I really did not have a chance to primp myself up before the show here, so I'm looking spectacular today. Anyway, you could tell I was literally crawling under desks right before showtime. So this is my crawling under desks look. Anyway, so the other thing I wanted to talk about with regard to the Penguin Random House thing is, because we're kind of having to go and rewrite in a whole brand new set of utilities on our end for sucking in their order sheets and trying to figure out what to make of them and match them up with ComicBase titles and things like that. We've had a little bit of a chance to do a rethink on how we've done this in the past. Typically what we would do, if you guys care, is these things arrive is in our door is like .csv files. If you guys ever opened up one of those with Excel, you know what that's like. Just miles and miles of columnar data, weird little quotes all over the place, and we sift through that one, find the data we're looking for, and then do all the matchy stuff. But we would basically read through the file line by line, take what we wanted and incorporate it in ComicBase, and then pass it down the line. And then we basically just kind of throw away the sheet. We're done with it. We don't go back. We've had a chance to rethink in the scale of larger plans how we maybe want to do that going this round out. And so now we're actually, with all the Penguin Random House stuff, and we'll probably do this with Lunar as well, is we're actually just sucking down the whole damn sheet whole. I mean, we're just eating it like the whale in Jonah, or whale in Pinocchio, I guess. But from that point, then we're, from our point, looking at the data that's important to us. But then we leave, once we establish the link that say that, Penguin Random House, series number SSH, item number, whatever the code is on the whole thing, that one is equivalent to a certain line in ComicBase. So we know what title, that one is. So that's Iron Man 7 series, book 2 or something. Once that link is established on our site, we've got the ability now to not just use all the fields that were interesting to us in ComicBase at the time, but also to give access to anything that Penguin Random House had ever said about that issue at all. Which, one of the things that you'll be seeing in Metropolis is there's things that are, kind of interesting in a weird way, whether for purposes of ordering bags and boards or just determining shipping costs or boxes or things like that. But there's things like, what's the physical height and width of the item in question? If for all the people who ever cared, we now have the ability to store page counts. And so those things are actually going to be built into ComicBase in the next version. You'll actually see those as new fields. But there are other things that you don't see as fields, like what's the synopsis of this particular issue of Spider-Man, right? So, MJ is going to dump Paul and they're going to go and do whatever else. And meanwhile, Venom will be doing blah, blah, blah. So all that stuff, if the publisher ever put it out there ever, we've now got a way to get back at it. So there are things that, even though it doesn't really belong in ComicBase in a particular place, you really, honestly, you don't want to be viewing that stuff issue by issue. Not in your database. I mean, why store it in your database? But because we've got the ability to have that link now, so we know that that's the synopsis of Amazing Spider-Man, 7th series, book 2. We have the ability now, just like we do with inventory data on Atomic Avenue, to marry those two things together with a web service so that we can say, all right, well, look, I know that we have some more information about this on our back end. So when you click on that, maybe that's when we can just literally make a quick web call and show you some additional things that we, like I say, don't really belong in the program itself, but might be interesting to see anyway. So that's something that we're keeping in mind, but at the very least, we're leaving our options open on that one. So yeah, think about that one, and let's discuss as we go forward on things, because basically anything that they've ever told us is now fair game, and so it's like, well, okay. By the way, things that they don't tell you about, from Penguin Random House, which you can imagine the fun that this is causing back at our place. They don't tell you a variant code. They don't tell you who's drawing which variants. Not really. Like, other publishers have got the idea that, like, we're going to have a description of variant B, or even if we just call this the Chichetto variant, we will have a description of what that code is. No, Penguin Random House just kind of buries whatever they do feel like telling you in the main description, and good luck sucking it out. The other thing they don't tell you, which other people thought was kind of useful to put in, but for some reason Penguin Random House, which has by far, I mean, like, knocked down, I can't describe how much better their IT operations are compared to everyone else we've ever dealt with. I mean, they have APIs, for God's sake. But one thing that they don't have in their data set, which I got to admit, I was rather surprised by, they don't have the weight. So when you're looking at a 750-page omnibus or something like that, there's nothing other than maybe interpolating off the page count that would give you the idea that this thing is going to weigh like 28 pounds, and so, I don't know. Maybe Penguin Random House is just so excellent at shipping that they transcended beyond the need to weigh anything. But I gotta say, that was surprising to me, and not in the fun way. So so it goes. All right, and let's see. Oh, Gary say, what is Metropolis you keep referencing? Is it another app? So Metropolis is the code name for the next version of ComicBase, which will be shipping by end of summer. I could call it ComicBase 2026, but we don't call it the thing it is until it really is that thing. We could decide, the marketing team over here could go nuts at the last minute, decide that no, that we're going to call it ComicBase Transformer. Whatever, but it's so that's what we have, code names until the end on the whole thing. So, but that's what we're working on. All right, so okay, so and we're talking about tariffs. All right, cool. All right, so that is all good. Let's get on to a couple of questions here, and conveniently, I burned through tons and tons of my time answering chat questions. If you guys have other questions in the chat, I do want to talk to those, but I did promise a couple of things in the lead up to the show, and so I do want to be able to talk to those. I'll get the number one out of the way first. Which is, there's a trick you can do in ComicBase, and it solves a problem that you may never have. But if you have this problem, this will be the most awesome thing ever. So you may somehow get to a point where you have managed to duplicate your listings in ComicBase. Let's say that you have gone and you've imported the same file into ComicBase twice, or you've done, or you are merging databases from different places or things like that. But one way or another, you've managed to have listings for, like, number one in near mint, number one in very good, number one in near mint again. But all the near mint copies are all 0, and the only ones that you really want are the ones that have quantity 1 that are the other ones. If this has ever happened to you, or if this ever does happen to you, there is a way of addressing it, and it's instead of going to every issue that you didn't want that has the 0 quantity near mint one that's cluttering up that title, you can actually have ComicBase just take those out for you automatically. It does this. Let me see if I can show this on the screen. It will do this, and unfortunately, I'm not going to have a great demo of this set up for you, because I had a demo set up on the demo machine before it took a header, and now it doesn't. But let me go into comic books over here, and let's see if we can get you an idea of what we're talking about. Iron Man, spelled with a U. Yeah, I'm doing well today. All right. Okay, so let's just head over to Iron Man. So let's say we're sitting here looking at Iron Man right now. We got, issues 13, 14, etc. Like, let's say you've got something like this, but you notice how all the quantities are all 0, conditions are all near mint. But let's say you somehow doubled yourself up on a bunch of issues. You want to blow them all out without having to highlight them all, hit delete, remove them, and so forth. There's actually a function, and it gets used. There's no direct interface to it in ComicBase, but you can trick ComicBase into doing it anyway. Anyway, which is to say, to remove extraneous near mint issues, which is to say, get rid of any issues which are listed in near mint, kind of like the stock issue, where the quantity is 0. So to get rid of any duplicates that way, it'll leave 1, it will get rid of all the duplicates, and it'll do it automatically. If that ever happens to you, and you ever want to do the cleaning up and not do it too much. Couple quick ways to do it. So if you want to do it to a single title, very easiest way to do it is to go up under here and to very temporarily change the media type of the title. So change your comic book to, a magazine, for instance, and then change it back. Another way you could do it is if you transfer any issue into the series. So let's say if I had a title called Iron Man, the first series, or Iron Man, series 1 or something like that. If I take an issue and I use the command to transfer items to a different series, whenever I do that and I choose, let me put this on the same screen, and if I choose Iron Man as my destination series, so if I take any other issue from any other place and transfer it into that series, it will then, as part of its deal, perform this cleanup. And the cleanup, because let's say I'd taken a series that was misnamed in the database, and then ComicBase had come out with the right name, but you still had some stuff under the old name. We wanted to have the ability for you to transfer stuff out of your old series and into the new series and not clutter up all your listings, right? So we have this thing, which again removes any extraneous near mint issues. So it will get rid of any of these stock near mint entries that have no quantity behind them, and it just clears the whole thing up. So that is the way to do it. Just go ahead and do a edit and transfer something into that series. You can transfer it right back out later if you want, or if you change its media type to like something else like a magazine and then change it back. Now, if you want to do it for the whole database at once, right? So let's say somehow you'd been merging databases in an older version of ComicBase like that, and you wanted to do it across the entire thing. The way to do that is if you import a single line from anything else. So just like make a text file with, a line, Action Comics number, 1000, quantity 1, where else, and near mint. Import that into ComicBase as part of its post-import cleanup. It will go through the entire database that you're importing it into and remove all the extraneous near mint issues. So if you have any old databases that are still cluttered up with goo from previous things, this is a function we only added in the last year to ComicBase. So certainly if you have older databases you've converted with older versions, or however you got the extra junk into your thing, that's a really good way of just kind of decluttering the whole darn thing. So anyway, that's the thing. Let's see. Steve Dassinger asks a great question. When changing type to remove data, does that any field data, since different types don't necessarily have the same fields? It does. So there, for instance, are magazines, for instance, do not have cover inkers. Comic books do, but magazines and comic books are very, very similar. And so there's like a 99% overlap of things, and anything that wasn't overlapped, if you just download the latest update, it'll put it right back again if you lost anything. So, but the less destructive way, if you want to invoke this one on the sly, is if you just transfer an issue in from someplace else, it'll clean up that issue, or import anything at all into your ComicBase. It can even be a zero quantity thing, but as part of the post-import cleanup, it'll do it to your whole database. And so that'll take care of that. All right, so let me see here. Steve asks, when removing dupes by importing one line, would I have to do that for each type of book? Oh, that's a great question. Yes, because when you import, you can only import one type of thing at a time. So that's the only type of thing it tries to clean up. So if for some reason you have duplicates in your newspapers and your magazines and your books and your comics, import a nothing into each one, and it'll clean up the entire database of any dupes for any means whatsoever. So that's about it on that one. So that's the secret tip I definitely wanted to share with you before I ran out of time, which I'm in the process of doing. So because we're getting close to that point, I'm going to jump into the usual PSAs. I realize this has been a strange and rambling comic-based show, but if this is the sort of thing that you find useful in your life, please do hit that like and subscribe, and if you please do leave a comment on the whole thing, if it's sort of like Pete, your hair was just absolutely lit today, because it definitely was. Anyway, it definitely helps get the engagement out of the whole thing, but definitely hit the like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Don't forget also, we have forums over at forums.comicbase.com, so you can suggest, find out all sorts of great things about the program, ask your own questions of fellow users, in the middle of the night when I actually sleep occasionally, or in that case, the middle of the day. you can get answers to things. But, there are other people there, and some of them, like Steve, often know more than I do about the program. So anyway, a great resource over there. There's also a great forum over there for including for having topics for future live streams. So please feel free to chime in there and see how that goes. You can get in there with your ComicBase login. You don't need to create a separate account for it. So give that a go. And then don't forget also, there's also a link to Andre's ComicBase cover catalog. So if you ever had about a jillion pages that you wanted to print off or just see as a PDF, what it would look like if you printed all the covers in ComicBase, that is your one and only chance. So there you go. All right. Yeah, Pete has a learning curve. Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, I get there in the end. Okay. All right. So I think I got time for maybe one more before we go here. So let me find the best one. Oh, yeah, no, I'm going to switch to it because one of these is really short. So question came up. A guy asked me, so how do I tell you guys if you got a bad picture? It's like the picture's like, it's something's wrong with it, or it's just we got the wrong cover for something, or whatever else. It does happen. We have 1.15 almost a million pictures in ComicBase right now. I mean, it's psychotic how many pictures that we have in the database right now. So yes, we're gonna, even if we got 1/100% of them wrong, that's still tens of thousands of comic books. So somewhere in the database, I'm sure we did something wrong, because it happens. We're human. If that ever happens, though, one thing you can't easily do is tell us we got it wrong through the corrections feature, because we don't want people just overwriting our covers willy-nilly, because that is a really good way to screw ourselves up. So if we ever did get a wrong picture on something, best thing to do, so a couple ways to go about it. One, if you have a scanner or the ability to scan things, if you scan your own high resolution, by high resolution, this would be the one time I'd actually say go ahead and set that scanner to 400 DPI or something senseless like that, just to make sure it's a big old resi file. If you then dump that one into your copy of ComicBase, it will get filed into the right place, overwriting our previous bad picture. But then if you then submit that to us as a newer corrected data, it will come in and as a new, bigger, better picture, because we always take bigger pictures over smaller ones. Or at least we want the ability to look at them, to take bigger pictures over smaller ones. So they'll come into our editors. It gives us a chance to replace the picture. Now, what if you either don't have a scanner or don't have the correct cover, but you just know it's wrong? And that was actually the question that this gentleman was asking this time, because at some point, just, I don't know, something went haywire, and we put a couple of covers that belonged to a different series into the series that in question. They were if you looked at them, they were just clearly labeled with the other series' name. In that case, best thing to do is send a note to support@comicbase.com, and just say, hey, yeah, you guys screwed up. Cover for El Perdita number 2A is wrong, or 2A and 3A, or whatever it was. And then we will just go ahead and say, oh, okay, and we will either replace them or delete them or do something with them. Again, if you can send that along with the correct cover, that's always very helpful. But it's a good thing. One thing, please don't do, unless we described it wrong, is don't get into a war on, you call this the B variant, but we prefer to call it the C variant, unless the listing is just out and out wrong. Variants, unfortunately, it is a naming game. There's not a lot, unless it's marked on the cover, which is rare, that this thing is the A, B, C, D, Q, whatever else version. Unfortunately, Midtown Comics and Cover Price, or all the other kids in town, are in the same mess we're in that when these things come out, and they come out without any kind of label from the publishers, we got to kind of make it up ourselves. As we got to make sure it's unique. But if you say, well, Midtown Comics called this the J variant, you call it the I variant, if what we care about is that the cover matches what we said it was. We don't care what somebody else called it, because unfortunately there is no standardization across most of this. And publishers, I'm going to say, as a consumer, that's a problem. You might want to get on that one way or another. The way I personally would prefer is cut down on the damn variants, but that's just me. If you feel like you must keep the variants going, I'm just going to say labeling. Labeling would really help a lot of folks. Just saying. All right. So that's about that. And let me see what else here. Greg says, and there was that one time years ago, and a picture of a can of maple syrup showed up in the database for an EC Comics issue. True story. I don't even remember that one, but I have no reason to doubt you. It could happen, just, like I say, 1.1, what is it, 1.14, are we up to, I think we're up to 1.15 almost million covers in the database now, because we have to count almost by 10,000s or 50,000s these days, just because there's just so damn many of them. All right, and then I actually went long on that one. After, I will say one other thing. All right, if this happens to you, I'm going to lay out a very specific set of circumstances. You're trying to log into ComicBase. You can log into the website. You have done all the normal things. You've reset your password, but for some reason you can log into into ComicBase, using your web browser, and you can't log in using the program. I'm going to say that there are basically 2-3 things to check. Number one, there is a length limit. So, I mean, if it turns out your password is like 97 characters long, shorten it up a bit. I think the limit's like 24 or something like that characters. I mean, it's lengthy, but it's not a novel. So if your password is a novel, make it not be a novel. The other thing that I would say is, make sure you're using the latest version of ComicBase. Previous versions of ComicBase were much more sensitive to things that were, that basically looked like attacks. So there were certain characters you could put in passwords that if you put other characters near them, it would look like you were trying to pull a fast one, and the server would shut it down, and so that would cause issues. But in this particular case, there was one really bizarre thing. The guy went, he reset his password, he did all the things. He could log in the website. He can't log in with ComicBase. Turns out he's using, yes, Windows 7. Windows 7 does not work anymore. It once worked. It once had servers that couldn't connect to, but unfortunately, it has been dead for so long, and it is so insecure. And honestly, and the components that it needs to talk to ComicBase are no longer shipped with ComicBase. So if you had a very old version of ComicBase, you could get it to maybe talk to the server or maybe not. But you will actually be getting, it's actually a server error, because the component that it needs, to talk, it's not part of anything that Microsoft even ships anymore. You can't even go find, it used to be called oh god, it was MSXML, Microsoft Services for XML. It was a component that was bundled once upon a time as part of a service pack. It's not bundled anymore, and you can't get it anywhere on their website. You might be able to find some guy to send you an old copy of it somewhere, but without that, your stuff can't talk to our server, and you're not going to be able to connect. You'll get a connection fail on that one. If that happens to you, honestly, and I don't say this lightly, upgrade. Upgrade something. Either upgrade your ComicBase or upgrade your Windows. Honestly, preferably upgrade both. Windows 7 is not something that you should be ever putting any data that you like on anymore. If you want to use it as your arcade system, absolutely go for it. But if it's connecting to the internet, oh, for the love of all is holy, do not do it, because Windows 7 is an open freaking book in terms of how many times it's been cracked and exposed to things that Microsoft has not patched for many, many years. By the way, Windows 10 is going to be that way soon. It's officially out of support, I believe, end of this year. It's not, Microsoft actually does a job where they will support things far after when they need to, but Microsoft, I believe Windows 10 is officially not supported as of, I want to say, November. That's a really weird one, because Windows 11, for the first time, they made it so you had to have certain hardware in order to even run it, where it had to have a thing called a trusted platform module. It's for storing essentially a crypto key so that your boot credentials can't be spoofed. It was thought to be a very important part of their security. There are ways that Microsoft has even published at this point of how to defeat the check for that and to run your Windows 11 on your machine anyway. But just so you know, Windows 11 is going to be the only game in town that's officially supported quite shortly. I'd say any data you love, anything that you trust, with certainly facing the internet, I'd say get that over to a Windows 11 machine. It's a good time to get yourself an upgrade. It's back to school. It's fall. It's the Amazon Day was just a little while ago. There were sales, but I will say that you can get perfectly capable machines for like $280 now that will run ComicBase like an absolute champ on the latest everything. And really, if you're running anything much older than that, it's probably time to put the old dog out, take her out behind the barn and put old Yeller to sleep. All right, that's about it. Someone's talking about Xiaoling. Okay, maple syrup. This is Xiaoling fielded that one. Okay, all right. Xiaoling, I believe, is currently working for a games company up in Washington currently, but doing quite well from what I understand. All right, guys. Well, that is it for the show right now. Thank you very much for coming, and wish me luck on the next one. Hopefully, I'll be a little less rumpled and have like everything before the show next time. Talk to you later. Bye bye.